just strapping in, you know?
Strap in.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm just making sure I'm good to go.
Cool.
And I am. I'm good to go.
Great. Grape. Me? What's up, everybody? This is your Purple Friends. I'm your co-host, Co.
And I'm your co-host, Joe.
Nice. And we have a lot to talk about today.
So much.
Oh my gosh.
So much. You know, I am perpetually online I'm chronically online. And so there's been a lot of love on the spectrum content. And so
Yeah.
I said to my co-host, Co, what if we talked about it on the podcast?
And I said, does that mean I have to watch it?
And I said, yeah.
And I said, oh, okay, I guess so. And then after we decided to do that, a bunch of other terrible stuff happened.
Around the topic of autism. And lo and behold, what is this? 8 pages worth of content?
Yeah, so I literally make 8 times as many notes for this episode than any other episode we've done before. Happy 10th episode, by the way.
Yes, happy 10th episode. When Corey gave me the show notes and it was a packet of 5 double-sided pages, I just asked him, like, this is wonderful. How
are we going to do this?
How are we going to do it?
And I think what I basically said was, just trust me.
Yes, so I'm trusting the process. Here we are. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it.
And we're going to talk about autism today, guys.
Yes, we're going to talk about autism today, guys. How exciting. I'm excited. I know you're excited.
I am excited. If it sounds like I'm stressed, it's actually how every emotion in my body manifests as stress. So I am excited. But you know what we got to do first?
A little grateful.
I haven't given not a single thought to this. And this is about to be the most difficult little grateful I've ever had to do. But that probably makes it one of the most important ones I've ever done.
Okay, a ver.
I'd like you to go first.
Oh, sure. I definitely have one. I am so grateful. I've started taking walks in the morning, like first thing, and it's been great. It's been so wonderful for my mental and physical health. Oh, I took a walk this morning and I took a little painting kit and I painted a little nothing on a piece of paper, and it was lovely. And I usually try to go first thing in the morning so that I do it, because if I think about it too long, I won't. It's the most physically active I've been in years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you always seem like you're in a really great mood when you come home from your walk first thing in the morning.
I definitely feel more energy. It's like they were right.
Oh no, they were right.
Exercise does make me feel better. And it does. Yeah. And I'm now saying that I'm freaking grateful for it.
Man, you know what I'm grateful for?
A ver.
Shorts.
Oh, yes. You're wearing shorts?
Right as we record
I'm wearing shorts.
This is my first time wearing shorts this year.
Amari's also wearing shorts.
Oh, yeah. Let's wear a whole shorts family. Soft, smooth, silky family.
Yeah. That's a really wonderful little grateful, because, yeah, it's a nice day out and we're in our basement.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. For an extra long episode, I dragged Joe into our basement when it's shorts weather outside.
Yeah, but that's okay. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So, where to begin? Well, let's begin where we always begin. Let's talk about what it is. Yeah.
Absolutely. The diagnosable definition, right? It is a neurodevelopmental condition that is characterized by differences in social communication, repetitive behaviors, and sensory processing. It is not an intellectual or cognitive disability. Let me repeat that. It is not an intellectual or cognitive disability.
Yes.
Yes.
Sometimes people who have autism also have other things.
Autism itself, it is not those things.
Correct.
It does have a lot of comorbidities with other just conditions in general.
Yeah, we'll talk a lot about that later.
But yeah, I mean, as you'll soon find out in this episode, the research is limited.
Extremely limited. Scarily limited.
Yeah, which is also not surprising for any marginalized communities. So we did the best we could with what we had.
Yes. And we're going to present what what we've got so far and where we think there might need to be more research.
Yeah, I before we get into misconceptions, I did also want to talk about language around autism.
Let's talk about it. It's important.
Yeah, because I think that, well, I know for me, when I was in school, in therapy school, we were taught to use person first language.
Person first language.
Right. So person with autism, person with depression, client with depression, whatever. Right.
Correct.
Person first. Right. Yeah. Not removing any sense of identity from the condition. Right.
You put the identity person before you put the identity of whatever condition they also have.
Correct.
As opposed to autistic person.
Correct.
Which puts autism before personhood.
And like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but like from my understanding, it's kind of like preference.
It is. It's totally preference. Yeah, amongst the autistic community, which, by the way, not a monolithic, not a well, I can never pronounce this word, heterogenic community, meaning
not
everyone who has autism is different.
Yes.
People from all different types of demographics can get autism. They're like saying a group of like people, autism as a whole is any one thing is inherently erroneous.
Yes. So yes, if you have someone in your life who's autistic, ask them what they prefer.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for saying that. Boy, is this the time?
That's why I looked at you.
Okay. Well, for me, I don't have a preference.
You don't have a preference?
No. Because, I mean, I totally validate other people's preferences. I would absolutely call anyone by whatever they ask to be referred to by. But for me personally, the distinction, my personal view on it is I got bigger fish to fry. If I know what someone's talking about, as long as they don't say something significantly worse than that, there are a lot worse things people can call you than an autistic person versus a person with autism.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that more too.
Yes.
And the reason why I say that is because I just want everyone to know, because I guess I've kind of danced around it on the podcast, is that I have autism. Boy, should I talk about it? I guess so. This is the time to do it, to stand in my truth and talk about what it's actually like. Okay. I'm just going to try to tell my story.
Lovely.
And this is not the same as probably a lot of people with autism. But I'm sure that there are some people with autism who are going to really resonate with certain parts of this story. For a lot of adults, the journey to understanding neurodivergence is a really confusing one. There's lots of misattributions, missed signs, including from like people of authority, doctors, your parents. For me, looking back, pieces start to fall into place as an adult that they didn't as a kid when I didn't really know what I was looking for. And when I was growing up, navigating the social world was really challenging. It's kind of like a code that I didn't have like the decoder ring for. There's this thing called theory of the mind, and it's an intuitive understanding of what others are thinking and feeling. I struggled with that until I was in high school.
Meaning that like thinking that other people also had thoughts and feelings for themselves. Right.
And I know that sounds really strange because most people, the vast majority of people, develop that when they're toddlers. Like children our daughter's age are currently developing that. But for me, I would have these recurring intrusive thoughts that it was kind of a script, or like I was the only one who had like this self-awareness or consciousness, like, and there were other people, I just hadn't met them yet, if that makes sense. I always felt this like weird disconnection to other people.
Kind of like a Truman Show feeling?
Kind of. Yeah. Oh, well, yes, actually, totally like that. Just honestly like thinking, I don't know, like if I didn't, it's really strange and there's no way to rationalize it if you haven't experienced it. I mean, that's just what it was. I really struggled with that into my teens. Instead of just knowing, I was always trying to analyze and to figure out rules. And for a really long time, my communication style relied heavily on scripts. And scripting is a thing that people with autism sometimes do. For me, it was a very literal version of scripting where I would literally repeat lines from movies and TV shows to communicate.
Can I give another example?
I would love
Caleb
to.
from the show. I think that's his name.
Caleb from the show? From Love on the Spectrum?
From Love on the Spectrum.
Caleb.
He was the one with all the little dogs, Coco, you know, and his mom and sister. Connor. So sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Yes. So Connor from the show.
Yes.
Connor, I feel like often used scripts. He would quote movies and like a lot of movies that actually we would quote.
Right. Like, and he made like a reference to Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah, I clocked it right away.
But he would also like reference like, gentlemanly lines from things that he's read or things that he's seen. And like, that was very much how I communicated when I was younger too. But it was a way to participate. And like talk to people, but it wasn't really like me expressing myself. And so like, because of these communication hurdles, I'm sorry, this story is taking so long.
No, you're good.
I developed this like social radar, which I manifested as like a disarming sense of humor. I tried to be kind of quirky, and say things from like my favorite comedic shows and stuff. And I was like always scanning reactions, trying to understand if I was getting it right. And like when something didn't land, quote unquote, I would feel it in the depths of my soul. Like I had misread the situation and I had fired up the wrong part of the script. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'm sure that's frustrating because it's trial and error.
Right. And it's masking. It's a form of not showing people not letting people hear my true thoughts and all that kind of stuff. But beneath that exterior, there's like this deep need for routine and predictability, and like tiny insignificant changes could trigger like really intense emotional responses. So like even now, a shift in plans feels like the rug has been pulled out from under me, unless, of course, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, it's the cancellation of plans, which brings me an immediate and intense drug-like pharmaceutical-like relief to my anxiety. My interests are so all-consuming. Hyperfixations that I dive into with an intensity that is like really off-putting to other people. Like, I'll give you a recent example. A year ago, Amari was really into Monsters, Inc. So I ended up having to watch Monsters, Inc. a lot. And as a result, I like came up with an idea for like a pretend prequel to Monsters, Inc. And I like fleshed it out in my head. And I thought it was a funny thing that I did. Like, wow, Corey like actually put a lot of thought into this. I thought that people would think that sort of like obsessive level of something would be funny because
wrote a whole
like outline of a movie, basically like a full story. And like my thought was like, we're a big fan of stuff like Mike's Mike online, this like obsessive overanalyzation, like people thinking it's funny to like kind of go off the deep end a little bit, like with the winky face, you know what I mean? Like use your obsessiveness to like intentionally and with consent create entertainment for other people. And I thought that was what I was doing, but it turned out that literally every single person I told grimaced, made a really strange face, made me feel like I was a crazy, like I shouldn't have shared. Like it was so off-putting. Really put me off from sharing anything with like so many different people. But so like that kind of stuff, like there's like a part of it that like there's an intensity that is portrayed in shows like Love on the Spectrum, where like you'll see Madison's doll collection, right? And you'll see her surrounded by people who are affirming of that and accepting of that. But the reality is that the 98 point whatever % of the population that doesn't have autism, they can be scared by stuff like that because they don't understand it. And that's really hard for a kid growing up and for an adult now. So like, in addition to all that, sensory stuff's dialed up. Certain sounds can be physically painful. Textures can feel abrasive. Sudden temperature shifts are jarring. And do not ever touch me with pruny fingers. If I have to rub my own pruny hands together, my brain will fully short circuit. Like I will let out sounds out of my mouth that I don't intend to let out. It's wild. Like even talking about this like makes me cringe. it's
like a visceral cringe.
yes,
Yeah.
like
It's like
shivers up my spine, makes me
physiological response versus like just social yuck feeling.
right, exactly.
You know?
Not just like a preference. It's not a preference. It's a fundamental aspect of how I experience the world, and sometimes it manifests as pain if it's so intense.
Corey once gave me this illustration of what it feels like to be overstimulated, and I feel like it really encapsulates that feeling that might come up quickly, right? Like the getting ice cold water on you when you're like sitting on a couch, for example. Like if you're sitting on the couch watching a TV show, bed rotting, whatever, and someone just comes up and like dumps cold, icy water over you, it's not painful. It doesn't cause damage, but it shocks your system. We do register it as pain, or our heart rate definitely races.
Yes,
You know, we have these physiological responses. Yes, a lot of us would get angry. And that's kind of what's happening when constantly when, and now as an adult, you've become a little bit more aware of some of those triggers or what are the things that you like to stay away from. But like every once in a while, like for example, our dog will bark, and I know it elicits that reaction with you, you know, or our daughter will scream in a way that like, I know it's like you're unable to not have that reaction,
right.
You know, and
that's called misophonia. That super sensitivity to like loud or sudden sounds.
Yeah. And I feel like you're very auditorily sensitive.
Yeah, for sure.
And Amari is too.
Yeah. Yeah, she definitely is. Poor kid. So like the other thing about autism is that is not really portrayed a lot is co-occurring stuff, comorbidities with autism. Okay. And a lot of them are invisible. So up to 80% of people with autism have gastrointestinal issues like IBS, or more severe conditions like IBD or Crohn's disease. Up to 60% have trouble with sleeping, including chronic conditions like insomnia. And all of these things interact with each other. They all trigger each other in a way that makes it really hard to live.
To regulate.
Yeah. And by the way, it's hard to be a parent with autism too. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. For so long, these aspects of myself were viewed through this lens of trauma. This is why a lot of this was missed when I was a kid. My dad died when I was 9. And I think that a lot of it was misconstrued as PTSD. And of course, I don't blame my mom at all. I'm sure that she's listening to this. But it's like a lot of it got attributed to PTSD, grief. And while those experiences undoubtedly had an impact, they don't fully explain the lifelong patterns and the fundamental differences and how my brain processes stuff and interacts with people. And coming to understand my autism as an adult has been a process of reevaluation, of self-compassion, and of finally understanding a fundamental part of who I am. And it's a journey that highlights the importance of recognizing these diverse presentations of autism and the need for greater understanding and acceptance of neurodiversity throughout autism, or throughout the lifespan, I should say, because this is just my story. And it's different from the stories that they show on Love on the Spectrum.
Yes.
And it's different from the other people I know with autism because they have totally different stories from me. It's complicated.
And those stories have often been told by other people, or have been buried, or have been
used
ignored.
For inspiration, exploited.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to exploitation. Don't worry.
But I think that I just really appreciate your bravery and sharing your story, because it is so important to hear different people's stories and just what their experience is, and shedding light to something that's been in the dark for so long and continues to want to be hidden away. And so if we, I think we've talked a lot about just taking up that space and
Yep.
your words being heard versus again, someone else's, which like, who might not be part of that community.
Right. And that's a huge problem.
Huge problem, especially in autism. Like,
let's go back to the outline.
okay.
Because I talked for a long time. We could use a little structure, co-host Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I think your story highlighted some of the misconceptions that is often found in autism. You know, this idea. Okay, we're gonna go through 10 common misconceptions. These are just again more broad, but like everyone's experience is different, and you could have experienced something else too.
Yeah, things that people really frequently think.
Yes.
Very common misconceptions.
Yes.
Maybe stuff that you might even think is true.
Correct. There's this misconception that people with autism have a lack of empathy, which is
Hello.
so I just disagree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I would beg to say, like, I would argue that it's the opposite.
Yeah. That's based on a dehumanization
Yes,
tactic.
exactly.
It makes us seem like less than people if we can't empathize with other people.
Yeah. And again, like I said, my experience has been the opposite, just with clients and people I know as well. Okay. Also that people with autism have certain savant skills, right?
Like Rain Man.
Like Rain Man, right? This idea that there's this extraordinary talent or,
You want to know something crazy? I shouldn't say crazy. That's stigmatized. You want to know something wild? Savantism is likely not even related to autism. And Rain Man, the character, is based on a person who didn't have autism.
really?
Yes, and it's a combination of a real person who did not have autism and the popular viewpoint of what autism was at the time.
Like Asperger's.
Right. And that is still what people think of autism today.
Yeah,
Rain Man.
well, and let's talk about Asperger's real quick. Asperger's was a condition in the DSM-4. Since 2013, it is no longer a mental health disorder.
And who wants to know why? It's because Asperger, the doctor who it's named for, was a Nazi. So we're taking his name right out of there.
Yes, thank goodness. So yes, so I think anybody who says like, oh, that they have Asperger, like, I've also noticed that like when people use the term Asperger's, like it's in a way to like
Distance themselves from autism.
Yes. Like
Not everybody
it's not
who-
as bad as autism is usually
Right.
what I hear.
But it is. Yeah. I don't know that everyone intentionally uses it that way, but if you do use it that way, I would seriously think about the weight of that word.
Yes. And also, yes, right. Like the part of this is to educate, right? That like, that is an outdated term. It is no longer relevant. And the correct term is autism spectrum disorder.
Yep.
And you can say it.
Yes.
Okay. Another misconception or stereotype is obsession with something specific, special interests.
Really
Now,
stereotypical obsessions.
yes.
Like, what do people think of mostly when they think of autistic obsessions? I think a lot of them think of like toys and trains.
yeah. Trains,
Trains
dinosaurs.
is a big one. Yep. Dinosaurs. Yep. Sorry, guilty of that one.
Yeah, you are guilty of that. And like the
I
thing
can't
is
help
like,
but they're so cool.
but like, okay, the thing is like, those are fine. Like these things are true.
Yeah.
The idea why it made the list is because we're not trying to stereotype. Not every person with autism has
Right.
special interests. Not every sorry, I'm like
That's okay.
stuttering. It's maybe a characteristic that some people experience, not everyone.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah, exactly.
Other misconception is that they're socially awkward or don't have friends.
Yeah, or that they're socially awkward because they don't want friends.
Or that they don't have friends because they're socially awkward.
Yeah.
Which I think, again, we have all seen very tangible examples, both in the show and our real life, of how that's incorrect. Poor communication skills universally. Communication is another characteristic, and where like though that can be There can be differences in communication.
Huge differences. Communication skills are also a huge component of masking. People can develop communication skills through masking.
Yes. Let's not forget communication is a learned behavior.
Yeah, let's not forget that I'm communicating right now.
Yes. And again, it's not this poor communication or inability to communicate. It's just a different way of communicating, right? Being attuned and learning that way of communication doesn't take much effort. We are social beings. And again, it's all learned behavior. You can learn to socialize with someone who communicates a little differently.
As long as you don't force them to meet you at your level.
Absolutely.
You can communicate with a lot more people.
Yeah. Avoiding eye contact due to rudeness or disinterest. No. It is a sensory-based behavior, right? Like our eye, like think about how much stimulation we get through our eyes.
Yes.
Eyes are like looking into someone's eyes is intense. It can be sensory overload. We are, and especially if you are attuned to someone, like you can be feeling and receiving a lot of sensory and emotional input through eye contact. That can be overstimulating or overwhelming. Okay. Another misconception, they can be rigid or unable to handle any change.
Yeah, that's not universal. I mean, that is a very common characteristic, but again, a lot of these misconceptions are we're trying to explain to people that like you can't use these common examples of what people think is universal in autism as some sort of diagnostic criteria because it's not everybody.
Yes. All stim in obvious ways like rocking and hand flapping.
Yes, everyone always talks about flapping. There's a lot more ways to stim.
Yes, I often say that I stim constantly.
Yes.
And I don't have autism, but
it's a spectrum.
It's a spectrum. We all experience some sensory input. We all get overstimulated to some degree. Autism threshold is just different than maybe a neurotypical person. So I definitely do stim. I say this to my clients all the time that knitting is essentially the best stim. You get bilateral stimulation, meaning both sides of your body. You get the sound, you get the movement, you get the tactile,
the sound.
Yeah, no, like the feeling between your hands. Like I always say it helps me regulate, right? That's all stimming is intentional sensory stimulation that is meant to regulate the body.
That's right.
So oftentimes you might see someone who is auditory or is maybe hypersensitive to sounds. And that can be like one of the triggers, but then can like blast music into their headphones.
That's me.
And it's like, well, what's the difference?
Consent.
Yes, like you're choosing to create this environment for yourself versus that environment imposing itself on you.
Yeah.
All right.
If anyone was curious, since I said I don't flap my hands or whatever I just said, I flex my toes like all the time. Rub my feet together a lot too, especially when I'm trying to fall asleep. It's like a cricket.
We also have discovered Corey paces nonstop.
Yeah.
That pacing is a stim.
Yes, pacing is a stim. I pace constantly. I never
sits down.
Yeah.
Not
great for my feet.
Okay. That all people with autism have intellectual disabilities. Again, incorrect. And autism is not an intellectual disability itself either. Autism is a childhood condition that people grow out of. Again, incorrect.
Boo.
It is not curable. It is not.
Autistic adults exist.
Yes. And this is something too that I think is a pretty universal experience, that any symptoms experienced in childhood tend to be more manageable in adulthood, simply because adults have more control over their environments, right? So like
environmental
control, right? If a child with ADHD, for example, lives in an environment in where there's no routine or structure or sensory output, like outlets. they're going to feel dysregulated more often. They have no control over when their mom does their laundry or when she asks him to, to brush their teeth or go to bed or whatever else. But as an adult, you have more control over those things. You can decide when and how frequently or how you set up your home. Again, this is something that we see, for example, with Madison from the show.
Yeah.
She has her own place, and she's decorated it how she feels comfortable. That is her sanctuary.
Yes, it's
she
awesome.
feels safe. She feels good there. And like, that's the whole point.
Yeah,
I think
reminds me of our bedroom with the 5 giant stuffed Pokemon that are on my side of the bed.
Exactly. Like it's even more than just like how we set up our space. It's also how we set up our day, like how we set up our time.
Yes.
So yes, adults with autism absolutely exist, and there are specific challenges with anybody who might be becoming more aware or starting to recognize some of those things within themselves, to get testing, to get a diagnosis, to get support, to get advocacy. And I know that that's also part of your story. It's been a struggle to get any kind of validation over your experience.
I want to talk about really quick some 5 really, really harmful stereotypes. Believe it or not, I put this list together before RFK started shooting his mouth off. So let me just really quick run through these. Here's some stuff that is not true. Autism is caused by bad parenting. Wrong. Autism is not caused by environmental anything that anyone has ever been able to prove. Not one thing. Never. Next, autistic people are dangerous or prone to violence. Nope. That's made up to discriminate against autistic individuals. Literally
and perpetuate
just made
fear.
Up. Yep. Autistic people lack humanity or are less than others. This goes back to that pretending that we don't have empathy thing. It's all just a way to remove humanity from us.
And I think this is maybe a good point to discuss like that theory that we had talked about. Several years ago, Corey and I were talking, and we had just floated this idea or talking about how like I think that people with autism might even be a more like the next evolution. Because people with autism tend to be more socially conscious, aware, sensitive, all these things.
Very, sensitive to justice.
Especially to
true
justice.
Yes. Not like somebody else's like definition of justice, but true equitable justice.
Right. There isn't this clouding of social expectation or social norm. That like there anyway, so that's what I fully believe.
That's a belief that is held among some in the autistic community too. That because the alternative is the reason why people believe that is really interesting. It's because like there's the alternative is that you're to do the opposite of those things, right? To be insensitive, to be cruel. Those don't require critical thinking. They are animal instincts. They're base selfish instincts, and to have the ability to not act on those is perceived as a highly intelligent and evolved ability. And it seems that there are some people who simply don't have that, and the autistic community seems to have that in spades. Yeah, which is really interesting, which leads to that theory.
Anyway, but yeah, I mean, like, again, it just feels so opposite, like completely opposite of what the rhetoric is. So yes, we're here to speak something different.
Right. And on that note, this false belief that autism is a disease that needs to be cured or eradicated. No, I'm not adding any more to that point. Moving on. The belief that autistic people are manipulative or intentionally difficult. Boy, that sounds like somebody who really hates autistic people wrote that.
Yeah, honestly, we can just period on all that.
Yep. I think is this a good time to talk a little bit about the last biggest, most harmful belief that vaccines cause autism?
Because they don't.
They don't. And I would be happy to walk everyone through the precise history that will give them all the ammunition they need to correct anybody who spreads that harmful misinformation.
Thank you. You know what? This is so helpful. Let me just be clear. Corey also comes up with like our show notes. And so this one's a nice little surprise for me. I actually, you know, Corey's going to take a little bit of a lead here.
Yes.
So I'm very excited because I do think that oftentimes we know these things to be true, but it's so helpful to understand some of the history and the background and why one, some of these misconceptions are born. It's purposeful, right? Like Corey was saying earlier that a lot of this is to spread misinformation, to dehumanize people with autism, to instill fear and perpetuate fear. And so, again, all of that is intentional. It is rooted in history. A lot of what we're seeing now in our current news and administration, scary and horrible, but also not new.
Not new. Not out of the question that it will be acted upon. Okay, so let's talk about why people think that vaccines cause autism. So, in 1998, a man named Andrew Wakefield published a paper in the Lancet Medical Journal where he claimed that the MMR vaccine was possible to cause autism. Here's what he didn't divulge. He was being funded by a rival company that was trying to create an alternative to the MMR vaccine. He had a financial stake in this research. It was then discovered that he 100% falsified all of the research. The study was discredited. All 11 of the co-authors discredited, distanced themselves from it, completely disavowed it. Every institution, every major medical institution disavowed it. And there has never, ever, ever been another study that has linked vaccines to autism. Ever.
So this one guy did a study.
To get rich, he faked a study.
Yes, thank you. Faked a study.
Yes.
Faked all the information,
Yes.
including that vaccine causes autism. That study...
To get rich.
That study, fake study, has been discredited
Completely.
And yet people
Less than a year after it was released, it was discredited
before
the year 2000.
And yet the health department,
the Secretary of Health and Human Services in the United States of America believes
this discredited research.
Right.
If any of you follow us on social media, I do something called, it doesn't actually have a name, but every once in a while I post summaries of actual research articles published by the APA, because again, like, it is so important. I'm like mincing my words. It is so important to back your up with research, right? Like empirically validated, peer-reviewed journals. That is the system and where we can find that we can trust, you know, like, and so
the scientific method, stuff that is repeatable. People around the world have been able to repeat studies.
Yes. And so if you are not reading current research and you're stuck in God knows when.
In 1999, in one fake paper.
I'm sorry, are not qualified for the job you fucking have.
Yes.
Ooh,
and that's just one of the many bullet points in the long list of reasons why you're not qualified to have the job you have.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to get heated because this is not the point. Please continue.
Okay. So let's talk about the impact of that study. Wakefield's information caused widespread fear and distrust of vaccines, despite all of that stuff being retracted. So there was decreased vaccination rates and outbreaks of preventable diseases. The entire anti-vax movement, the entire modern anti-vax movement is traced back to this one action by Andrew Wakefield. Okay? The false link between vaccines and autism stigmatized autistic individuals and their families, fueling harmful misconceptions. Before Wakefield, concerns about vaccines were fringe at best. His paper, published in a respectable medical journal, however briefly, lent an air of legitimacy to these fears, making them much more mainstream. His narrative tapped into existing distrust of authority and the pharmaceutical industry, creating a fertile ground for conspiracy theories to take root and spread. Despite being discredited and losing his medical license, Wakefield chose to become a martyr figure for the anti-vaccine movement, further solidifying their beliefs and resistance to scientific consensus. So this dirtbag con artist doubled down.
His heels, yep.
Yes.
Which is what most people do when they know they're wrong.
Right. And the fallout from the Wakefield scandal contributed to a broader erosion of public trust in scientific institutions, medical professionals, making people more susceptible to misinformation across various scientific domains, not just vaccine. Is any of this sounding familiar or relevant? The internet and social media amplified Wakefield's initial claims exponentially. Remember, this was in 1999 and 2000. Even after their traction, the false information continued to circulate widely, reaching and influencing countless individuals. This created an environment where anecdotal evidence and emotionally charged narratives often outweighed scientific data. Kind of sounds like the world we currently live in. Yep. The damage to public health and the reputation of science caused by this one man is literally incalculable. Now, how does this relate to today? RFK Jr., the head of Health and Human Services, has repeatedly promoted the debunked claim that vaccines cause autism, despite overwhelming scientific evidence to the contrary. And by the way, there is overwhelming scientific evidence to the contrary. There's one fake study. There's tons of real studies that prove the opposite, that disprove this, okay? His position as a prominent figure gives his misinformation a platform, further endangering public health. His statement about revealing the quote-unquote cause of autism in September is incredibly alarming. He's this quote-unquote autism registry, the cure, the rhetoric about being a burden to society. This is eugenics. And for no reason at all, I'm going to really quickly talk about the history of eugenics. This is classic. This story has been told before. Not just in Nazi Germany, this has been told in our own country. This is a slippery slope to forced sterilization and genocide. The history of eugenics and forced sterilization is a very dark chapter in American and human history, particularly for disabled individuals. The idea that autism is something to be cured or prevented echoes these dangerous ideologies. So when someone like RFK says something that's totally untrue, that dehumanizes and stigmatizes a group of people, it creates this climate where discriminatory policies and actions become much more likely. So when people promote this idea that autistic people are a burden, or that they're broken, or that they're less than human, they're literally promoting actual genocidal ideas. Genocide. Let me say that again. Genocide, okay? The belief that dumb people shouldn't be able to have kids is also genocide, okay? Please stop making that joke that people need a license or whatever to reproduce. If you don't understand why that joke is a eugenicist joke, I want you just to imagine your worst enemy defining what a dumb person is. It's vital to recognize that the anti-vaccine movement is not just about vaccines. It's intertwined with ableism and a desire to control the genetic makeup of our society through the elimination of undesirable traits in people, aka the literal definition of eugenics, okay?
Can I put a pause?
Please do.
Because I feel like some of you might be asking, why do people believe false information? I recently read a study published in the APA journal that explores this exact idea. Why do people believe clear lies, right? You just laid out for us that there is one fake study that a huge amount of people choose to believe versus an overwhelming amount of research that people are blind to.
Right.
Why? Right. And so this study showed that there is that's all psychology. That's all social psychology, right, at play. That there are other factors, albeit clearly more important, I put air quotes, more important factors than facts, social factors. So some of the reasons why people believe things that are clearly false is to adhere to a certain group or population, to show support or loyalty. Also, just to maintain sense of reality, right? Because I think if let's say you grew up in a house where this was the norm, that y'all didn't get vaccinated and this was the rhetoric in your home. In order to accept the overwhelming amount of research, you would have to deconstruct so many different definitions. And that is so scary for so many people.
Yep.
That it's easier to dig our heels in, to double down and say, well, this is true, or, you know, like, let's make a registry, or let's do this, or let's have people apply for licensings to get to have a baby. And so many of my clients will ask me that, like, I don't get it. Why? Like, this is like fact, the science, like, and you can have like, and again, you can zoom out and view it from a national level. And I say this in that little clip on my Instagram, or you can zoom in and like, people can have like video evidence or text proof. People will show me their receipts all the time and be like, this is what happened. And the other person in this individual fight will still not believe it, right? It's much harder to deconstruct your own sense of reality than it is to accept reality.
That is true.
So I hopefully that gives some insight as to, again, what might be happening in the minds of people who believe this, who perpetuate it. It doesn't excuse it by any means. Let me be very clear. But again, it helps us understand a little bit more. And might I say, helps us empathize, which sounds hard to do when we're talking about empathizing with people who cause us so much pain. And there's so much pain in the world right now. I still strongly believe that healing is through confronting some of that and practicing empathy. And I'm getting emotional because I don't want to.
I'll jump in for you. Another thing that is really a huge factor in this and totally relates back to Andrew Wakefield is the anti-science movement in America that has made it very easy for people to just say, no, I don't care about science because I'm part of this group that doesn't really accept science as fact. So that sucks.
Yeah. That's like that whole group,
Science.
they, them, or, you know, them versus us mentality. Those dynamics, those power dynamics, those group dynamics are more powerful than fact.
Yeah.
Like, that's why psychology, social psychology is so important. And I think also why it's so fascinating to so many people is because it doesn't make sense, right, on paper. If you were to write this down, it's like, well, duh. You know, and people do write it down. They make stories, like they create the Hunger Games or make these other stories, and everyone roots for the quote unquote right person, even if they can't like translate that to their own world.
Right. Yeah. People who like voted in an authoritarian dictator for president are like, yeah, go Katniss, beat President Snow.
Right. Like, are they rooting for Gilead in The Handmaid's Tale or what? Like, I just don't get it. Okay. So sorry. Continue with the history because it has been fascinating and where I think we're at abuse and sterilization and institutionalization. Yeah.
Okay. So throughout history, autistic individuals and many others with developmental disabilities have faced horrific discrimination, including widespread institutionalization in inhumane conditions. These institutions, and by the way, this is forced institutionalization. This is not people who were voluntarily checked into these places. This is people taken from their family and forced into these situations.
Kidnapped.
Yes. These institutions were frequently sites of neglect, abuse, and a complete lack of autonomy and basic human rights. There was extended, horrible isolation, abuse, torture, electric shocks, beatings, okay? The eugenics movement led to the forced sterilization of countless individuals with disabilities, including autistic people, based on discriminatory and scientifically unfounded beliefs about genetic inferiority. We don't even know how many people they destroyed when they did all this. While these practices are now widely condemned in many parts of the world, the legacy continues to impact the way autistic individuals are perceived and treated. Here's something that you need to know. These abuses are not a distant historical event. The last U.S. state to repeal its eugenics and forced sterilization laws did so in 2003. In some parts of the world, and even within certain systems, autistic individuals continue to face neglect, abuse, and a lack of agency over their own lives. We must remain vigilant and advocate for the fundamental rights and dignities of all autistic individuals for this reason. Now let's talk about what happened after they put everybody into institutions. Let's talk about the dookie garbage from a toilet century that was the 1900s. The eugenic movement gains traction in the early 1900s, leading to the passage of sterilization laws in many states, with Indiana enacting the first such law in 1907. Okay? These laws targeted individuals deemed, quote, unfit, including those with intellectual and developmental disabilities, mental illness, and sometimes based on race and socioeconomic status.
Let me just point out that this also contributes to this idea that people's worth is only based on their productivity.
Yes, their contributions to society.
That is false, 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 false.
The point of a society is to make sure we are all alive.
You have worth, period. You have inherent worth without having to prove it, or whether or not how productive you are to society or to your family or to anybody else.
Yes.
Just.
No, sorry, that was me giving you snaps. Oh. That's normally why we cut the podcast. Okay. So let's move into the mid-20th century, okay? We're talking like the 1940s to the 1960s. Following World War II, the revelations of Nazi atrocities, the eugenics movement lost significant public support. However, that didn't stop them from continuing forced sterilizations in most U.S. states. In 1970s, landmark legal cases and increased advocacy brought greater scrutiny to these practices. There's a case, Stump v. Sparkman in 1978, that highlighted the lack of legal protection for individuals undergoing sterilization. Federal guidelines in 1978 aimed to restrict the use of federal funds for sterilizing minors, the, quote, incompetent, and institutionalized individuals. So here's what that case is about. It centered around the forced sterilization of a 15-year-old girl in Indiana in 1971. The girl's mother filed a petition with a circuit court judge, Judge Stump, requesting that her daughter, whom she described as, quote, redacted for cruelty and associating with older men, undergo a tubal ligation, which is a forced sterilization, which is a sterilization technique. It's tubes tied, getting your tubes tied. The Judge Stump approved the petition the same day it was filed, without any hearing, without informing the daughter, without appointing a lawyer to represent her interests, and without any opportunity for appeal. The young woman was told she was having her appendix removed, but instead a tubal ligation was performed. She was still never told. Years later, after marrying and being unable to conceive, she discovered that she had been sterilized. She and her husband sued Judge Stump, her mother, the attorney, the doctors, and the hospital, alleging violation of their civil rights. So that's what that case was about, okay? In the wake of this case, many states repealed their eugenics laws because they had, fallen so far out of public favor. For example, California, which had one of the most extensive programs, appealed its law in 1979. However, reports and investigations have indicated instances of coerced sterilizations continuing into the 21st century, particularly targeting incarcerated women, okay, people in prisons, okay? The last state to formally repeal its eugenics sterilization law was North Carolina, like I said, in 2003. The one before that was Virginia in 2001, though these states later offered compensation to the victims, acknowledging the harm caused. Not very much compensation, I checked. Mass institutionalization is ending, though. Hey, we repealed all these laws. That's great. Incarcerated people will finally have rights. That's good news, right? Nope. Here's what happened. Mass discharge without adequate support. Starting in the mid-20th century, large numbers of individuals were released from state-run psychiatric hospitals with the intention to integrate them into the community with support systems like community health centers, housing, and vocational training. However, that often didn't happen. It was insufficient, never fully developed, completely underfunded. It fell short, leaving individuals without the necessary resources to live independently or manage their conditions. And what did everybody do? They said, not our problem. They criminalized mental illness and homelessness, and without adequate mental health care and housing, many individuals struggled to cope, leading to increased rates of homelessness, substance abuse, involvement with the criminal justice system, jails, prisons, which, by the way, they could be subject to forced sterilization again, were suddenly thrust into a world that they were not equipped to handle. And homelessness and the lack of treatment often exacerbated mental health conditions, creating a cycle of instability and making it even harder for individuals to access help and find stability. The legacy of that history of mass institutionalization, the chaotic deinstitutionalization, casts an incredibly long shadow for generations. Autistic individuals and others with neurodevelopmental differences were hidden away, their experiences ignored, their identities pathologized. The historical context directly impacts how we understand autism today, and tragically, it contributes to very real difficulties that autistic adults face all the time.
Some of you might be thinking this story sounds familiar.
Yeah.
You hear it in the Native American community, in the queer community, in the Latino community, in the Black community, in any marginalized community. You hear this exact same story. And honestly, if it doesn't piss you off,
it should figure out how to make it piss you off.
Because like if you by now don't know someone who doesn't belong to one of these communities,
that's because they were disappeared.
Anyway, continue.
It's just unreal. But yeah, like I said, that history directly impacts autism and our understanding of it today. It leads to real difficulties for people like me who want to get a diagnosis. Think about it. For so long, the prevailing narrative was one of institutionalization, or of autism being something that can only be manifested in childhood for like really specific reasons. That would shape the awareness and understanding of autism in adults. And as a result, it created this huge blind spot and a huge failure to recognize the diverse ways that autism can present across the lifespan.
Historically, girls have been underdiagnosed for that exact reason, right? Yes. Like all of and I think back to like this forced sterilization in our history, like in the 40s and 60s. And like, I'm thinking about, oh God, I'm going to get emotional.
That's okay.
I'm thinking about the moms in that time who had kids who were probably desperate to socialize them, desperate to get them to learn how to mask, to keep them safe. And like, that's what masking is. In any sense of the word, I feel like it's just
a way to stay safe.
A way to stay safe. It's a survival technique. It's so that I can get this job, so that I can pay my rent. It's so that I can make these relationships, so that I can blend in and not be called out. Sorry, you cut that one.
That's okay. I don't want to cut that. That was good. So let's talk about adults getting diagnosed with autism. People like RFK would have you believe that it's so easy to go for an adult to go get an autism diagnosis. Like everyone's going and getting them. Everyone seems to have a little autism. Don't ever say that, by the way. If you are an autistic adult who was missed during childhood due to diagnostic criteria, it probably was because historically diagnostic criteria is focused on male presentations and more obvious behavioral traits. Like Joe said, masking, this conscious or unconscious effort to camouflage your traits, your autistic traits in social situations, that can become basically reflexive. My masking as a 32-year-old man, am I 32?
Yeah.
Wow. It's reflexive, totally. Like, I walk out into public, my mask comes on automatically, like I'm a freaking superhero. Okay, hold on. I'm going to cut that. No superhero talk. So this ability to mask, this enhanced ability to mask, can make you seem like you're not autistic to somebody who doesn't know any better. So this lack of awareness and understanding permeates the healthcare world. A lot of people don't realize that. This is a tremendous problem for the autistic community, is that if you go out and you see, the huge percentage of people who are like autism, they have these crazy misbeliefs about autism. There are doctors like that too. Like
there's that whole book and this whole belief of like, well, you don't look autistic.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's a good book, by the way. You Don't Look Autistic by Bear McCreary. He's an autistic comedian from Canada. Here's the thing. Let me give you an example, and this is going to be another self-disclosure. When I tried to get diagnosed with autism, our insurance didn't cover it. It cost $600 to get the initial phone call. And this is how that phone call went, okay? And let's remember really quickly the definition of autism, okay? Characterized by differences in social communication, repetitive behaviors, and sensory processing, okay? Here's what I said. I said, yes, I'm very convinced I have autism. I get stuck doing these repetitive behaviors. And she cut me off. And she said, that sounds more like OCD. And I said, I haven't even finished talking about it. And she says, well, repetitive behaviors are really more like OCD. So you should really talk to your general practitioner about that. That cost $600. And that was one of those places that is advertised as like, we can help you get an autism diagnosis as an adult. Here's another huge problem. You need a note from your parents to get diagnosed with autism. Can you think of any other diagnosis that requires input from somebody else? From somebody who may not even accept that you are autistic? Imagine if you have a parent who never accepted that you were autistic. You grew up and you knew you were autistic. You went to go get a diagnosis. You paid all this money and you clearly meet all the developmental criteria, but your parent will not write a letter or provide testimonial that you exhibited these traits in childhood. Bye-bye diagnosis.
For some of you that might be wondering, like, who diagnoses autism, let me do a quick little...
Oh, thank you so much. This is so helpful.
Because, like, you might be thinking, like, well, Jocelyn's a therapist. Yes, I am a therapist. I'm a master level clinician. I am fully licensed in the state of Illinois. That is my end all be all as a therapist. There are psychological tests, right? So like actual tests that you could administer to clients that are doctor level tests. So you need a doctorate to administer these tests. You could, as a master level clinician, get your PsyD and learn how to administer these tests. So you need essentially a PsyD, a PhD, an MD, whatever. I don't even think PhD. I think PhD is more so like education based and research based. It's more so clinically based. So again, PsyD, MD, psychiatrist.
Yeah, doctoral level degrees.
Doctoral level degrees. As you know, cost lots of money.
Yeah.
We need many times insurance approval because they cost so much. You want your insurance to cover it. And it takes time.
Yeah.
Right? If we're talking about getting to know an individual, that takes time. For me as a clinician, that's like all I freaking do is make relationships with individuals. And sometimes it takes some time. Sometimes it could be in one session. That'd be great. Other times it takes like a few months. So all that being said, they're not trying to do that. They're not trying to put out all this money. The insurance aren't trying to pay for it. Doctors are not trying to spend X amount of hours with you to get to know you, to diagnose you. So they're going to slough it off to something else that still maybe makes sense. Anxiety might make sense. IBS might make sense. OCD might make sense. So that you are unable to get the advocacy you deserve and need. Sorry. Okay.
No, I mean, thank you for that. I mean, that's extremely valuable information. And by the way, me not having a diagnosis doesn't mean I don't have autism.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you one thing I am a little bit grateful for currently about not having a diagnosis is that I will not be on that registry that RFK Jr. is talking about. And luckily no one in our family will be. So there's that. So it's complicated. And there's gatekeeping within the autistic community against people who don't have official diagnoses, even though I just told you the very real reasons why someone might not be able to access a diagnosis, even though they have it.
And let me just say, too, that, like, Corey's not the only one. There have been several clients that I am picturing currently in my mind that I have advocated for to get testing and have been denied, and who I strongly believe have autism. And I know them. I've had relationships with them. I know their families. I have relationships with their families. I see and hear the difficulties that they experience that could benefit from some of these resources that are being gate-kept. Absolutely.
Yeah. This is actually going to bring us a little bit back to our conversation about love on the spectrum. So let's talk a little bit about this show. This is really hot right now.
Everyone's talking about it.
Yes, it's very popular with neurotypical people. It's very popular with neurotypical people. Yeah, I got 95% on IMDb. Amazing. Inspiration porn rates really highly. Here's the deal. Well, okay, hold on. No, back up. I'm not going to tell you the deal because there are some things that are worth talking about this show that are good. I'm not going to say here's the deal until we're done with that part.
I mean, the participants of the show and their families, like, no judgment or criticism. They're great. I love to see them fall in love.
Yeah,
that's wonderful.
We're big fans of the people on the show.
Our criticism and beef is more so with production.
Yep.
And even just the existence of the show. Where should we start with this?
Let's talk about the show. Okay, if you are one of the few people who hasn't seen or doesn't know what it is, it is a show where people on the spectrum are filmed going on dates.
Blind dates, might I add.
Going on blind dates with all kinds of different people, not just other people on the spectrum. And just their successes and failures in their journey of love. And
there can be a lot of wholesome and sweet moments, and there are. But
yes,
and there is a big but.
A big old juicy.
Since the beginning, because the third season came out. Since the beginning, I don't know when the first season came out.
Since 15 minutes into watching the first episode,
I think you and I felt uncomfortable.
Yes.
Something was wrong.
Yep.
Something didn't sit right. And we learned that these participants are not compensated for their time.
Correct.
Oh, should I continue?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, these participants are not compensated for their time on the show. Yes, maybe production comps their dates, but they do not receive any money for these blockbuster shows on Netflix that people are talking about. They go viral. They do succeed. I mean, I've checked their social medias. They do get a larger social media following, which does inherently benefit them, you know?
Maybe.
Correct. Because you also could
from
get...
the perspective of a neurotypical person.
Correct. Yeah. Absolutely. So that to me screams exploitation.
Yeah.
Because is this show... I guess we should also then define what the show is. Is it educational or is it entertainment?
The show should define what the show is because here's the thing. You said that the participants are not paid. That is because this show is technically a documentary. It's legally and financially classified as a documentary.
A docuseries.
Yeah, which means that
it is inherently educational.
Yes. There is an implication that it is inherently educational. That's part of the definition of documentary. This is not an educational show.
No.
This show is showing an extremely biased, one-sided view of what autism can be.
Thank you. One-sided view. Like, it does lack diversity in terms of autistic participants.
Yes.
Not just in
demographically,
race,
but like just presentations of autism.
In presentation. They're still socially acceptable enough, like socially acceptably autistic. You know what I'm saying?
Like they can mask enough.
Right. Or they can be charming in a way that's going to
entertain neurotypical people.
Because, like, let's be honest, this show is entertainment. Yes. You know, we don't call Love is Blind a documentary or educational. We call it entertainment. Yeah. You know, and I strongly believe that Love on the Spectrum is more akin to Love is Blind than to a documentary or a docuseries, right? So I think that is 100% a loophole to not compensate the participants.
Yes.
And to now like use a whole community to entertain that isn't created by that community.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, there's also pretty big influences of Autism Speaks. And that's maybe a good time for you to talk about Autism Speaks in general.
Sure. So Autism Speaks is a quote unquote autism advocacy group. They are one of the most famous, probably the most famous.
It's like the puzzle piece.
Yes. A lot of people know Autism Speaks. Let me tell you a little something about Autism Speaks. Okay. Only 1% of Autism Speaks budget goes towards family service grants that are the organization's means of funding services for people with autism. Okay. 1%. Autism Speaks spends 20 times as much on fundraising. They spend almost 50 times as much on advertising and lobbying. Its rates of executive pay are the highest in the autism world, with some salaries exceeding $600,000 a year. Autism Speaks has a board of 28 members. Only one member of the board has autism. By contrast, 23 members of the board are representatives of major corporations, including current and former CEOs and senior executives of PayPal, Goldman Sachs, White Castle, FX Networks, Virgin Mobile, eBay, AMC Networks, L'Oreal, CBS, SiriusXM, American Express, SC Johnson, and Royal Bank of Scotland. Not a lot of names that I particularly associate with autism rights or anything like that. Autism Speaks uses its platform and advertising budget to portray autism and autistic people as mysterious and frightening. It adds to the problem. It adds fuel to the fire that people think that autistic people are a burden. They are creating barriers. 1% of your dollar, 1 penny of every dollar will actually help someone with autism. Now, you want to know some places that are a good place to donate your money or to help people with autism? How about the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network? This is a network by and for people with autism. It has autistic input. It has autistic leadership. It is fully autistic. How about the Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network? How about who seek to share information about acceptance and understanding of disability? All of these organizations are doing great work with autism. The Self Advocates Becoming Empowered Network, SABE. So these are examples of places where if you are concerned about autistic people, this is where your donation should be going. Forget Autism Speaks. And here's why this is important. Autism Speaks was mentioned by name in Love on the Spectrum probably 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, multiple times.
The cast members on their social media share stuff by Autism Speaks. So it gives the impression that
alignment.
Yes, that autistic people are okay with what they're doing. And here's another thing that really bothers me about the show is that the cast members are now the representatives of, as I said before, not monolithic group of autistic people. So you'll see people say something like, oh, look at this thing by Autism Speaks. And you'll see 99.999% of the comments are just like, oh, great. How can I support? And it's all going to them, which means it's all going to their executives. It sucks.
So if you think that watching or supporting Love on the Spectrum supports people with autism, it doesn't. In fact, it supports people that exploit people with autism.
Yes.
You know, it supports people who are already rich. We don't need to be doing that, you know? Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
For that history.
And also, okay, moving on from Autism Speaks, the other huge problem I have with the show, and this is what I mean when I say it's not representative of autism. People with autism, over 40, I think it's like somewhere between 49 and 60% of people with autism are living at or below the line of poverty in America. Even more don't have insurance. Some don't have ability to take medications, don't have access to a doctor,
or speak the language,
speak the right language for them to get help. The show portrays autism as goofy little kids being held up by their parents. I'm sorry, spouting extremely conservative garbage values about stereotypes between men and women. It's so misrepresentative.
So it's not representative at all, you know, and it does, I don't know, a part of me, haven't quite identified what it is, but also kind of gets pissed off when I see clearly neurotypical people saying like my relatable queen, or like I need to find me an
Connor.
Yes, I need to find me an autistic person. It's like, what?
Back up. We are not playing Go Fish here.
Yes. So we just felt like we couldn't not talk about both the show and the rhetoric in our current administration around autism, because it's near and dear to our hearts. And also I know we're there. I wanted to quickly talk about ABA therapy because I think.
Oh, please. Oh my God. I was taking it easy on them because we had so much to talk about, but I would love to talk about ABA therapy.
I wasn't going to go into the details of it. I was just strictly going to say that it's like the number one recommended form of therapy for autism. And I strongly recommend not using it. Yeah. It is actually pretty unhelpful to people with autism.
Adults with autism have horrible negative experiences with ABA.
Horrible negative experiences with ABA because it's all learned behavior based.
Yes, it's all about enforcing masking and trying to adjust into neurotypical behavior and expectations.
Basically beating
all about
these kids into an acceptable form.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of resistance and lack of empathy on the autistic person, like towards the autistic person, on like what they might be going through or what they might be experiencing. I do not recommend ABA therapy, point blank, period. Do not take your kid there ever, period.
Whatever they're doing to your kid is something that you as a parent could probably be doing. Like
in a much better way.
As far as like, and I'm sorry, but I'm sure this is going to piss off a lot of people who I'm sure even people with autism who love and swear by ABA therapy or their therapist.
And I hope that they had a good ABA therapist that worked on the relationship.
And that's great. And I'm really happy that happened to you. But for overall, a lot of people, ABA is abusive.
Yes. Yes, I do recommend, though, play therapy, talk therapy, sand tray therapy, occupational therapy, wonderful for that. Music therapy, nature walks, like sensory things.
Becoming more open to nonverbal communication.
And most importantly, having the person with autism take the lead on that.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether they're children. That's another thing. Children know. They know.
Yeah.
They know what feels good, what doesn't feel good, and they communicate it. Yes, so that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. I mean,
I think we can
wrap up.
Start to.
Yeah, I think so too. There's one thing I want to say before we like really wrap up. And I know that I've been talking for a really long time, and there's probably still people after everything we've said that are still going to be like, he can't have autism. Like, I'm listening to him not have autism right now. The only reason I'm comfortable recording my voice and my thoughts is because I'm alone in a room in my house with the person that I'm most comfortable with in the entire world. Okay, it's a little silly to admit this, but one of my personal interests, one of my quote unquote special interests, is listening to old episodes of Sawbones, Adventure Zone, Movim Bam podcasts. And I guess that makes me feel more confident about co-hosting a podcast like this.
You've listened to literally thousands upon thousands of hours.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot even fathom how much of these shows you've listened to.
Yeah, I really hope the McElroys never find out about that. Sorry. But not only that, but like I edit out stuff that makes me embarrassed all the time. I can't even tell you the amount of times that like Jocelyn has said like, okay, you ready to wrap up? And I just like tank the energy by saying something totally wrong or weird. Like we have to start over, like,
or stutters or miss, you know, whatever else. Like we have the liberty to do that, which is really nice. And like Corey said, gives him confidence.
This is our safe space. Okay. But as soon as I step out of the house, as soon as I'm not recording this podcast, which again has an outline and research and editing to make me feel and seem more confident.
Forethought.
Yeah. When I'm out in the world, it's like bracing for impact at all times.
I constantly tell Corey to unclench.
Yeah.
And he'll have to, like, his whole body, you can tell, is holding on to tension. Like he said, he's constantly bracing. His body is bracing for impact. Sorry, continue.
This anxiety, like it just like simmers below the surface, and the world feels unpredictable, unwelcome, and unwilling. It's exhaustion from masking and trying to contort yourself into a round hole when you know you're a square peg, and a way that other people find palatable, only to collapse in private, wondering where you know, the real you went, or it has ever even existed. It's higher rates of anxiety and depression and suicide that follow you like a shadow. Messed up guts, messed up sleep, messed up blood sugar that doctors can't help with because the standard treatments don't work, or they make you worse because there hasn't been any research done on comorbidities with people with autism. Caffeine and melatonin have no effect. SSRIs for depression make depression and anxiety worse. Stimulants, antipsychotics, anesthesia doesn't work the same for you. And your complaints are met with disbelief because there's just no way you should be able to feel this right now. And then they proceed anyway. It's social rejection, missed cues, loneliness, feeling like a subhuman in a world that demands more but limits you with labels. Stress, constant stress of navigating a world built for others, a world that feels actively hostile just for your willingness to participate in its bullshittery. And then, beyond that, there's the people, casual cruelty in conversations, not at all subtle suggestions that you're a burden, a problem to be solved, erased. It's a chilling awareness that a significant proportion of the population proudly harbors eugenicist fantasies, and they genuinely believe the world would be a better place without people like you in it, like people like me, people like us, that our existence is a tragedy to be corrected. It's not. We are not a tragedy. We are not burdens. We contribute to society, and yes, RFK, we pay taxes. Significantly more than everyone you work with, motherfucker.
If only they knew.
This is a different way of experiencing the world, a way that brings with it incredible strengths. This is a laser focus that can unravel complex problems, a pattern recognition that sees connections others miss, a fierce loyalty to justice, truth, an unshakable passion for deeply held interests. This is Temple Grandin, revolutionizing animal welfare. This is Satoshi Tajiri, creating Pokemon. This is Anthony Hopkins and Greta Thunberg and countless other autistic individuals contributing brilliant insights to science, technology, art, humanity, every field imaginable. Difference is innovation. Difference is perspective. And yes, we have been around for a long, long time. So here's the call. It's time to immediately remove eugenicist vocabulary from our discussions about autism. Words matter. Ideas matter. Casual dehumanization has to stop. Stop talking about cures. Stop talking about eradication. And Jesus Christ, stop using the R word. Start talking about acceptance. Start talking about understanding. Start celebrating the diverse beauty of the human mind and listen to autistic voices, because we're here. We have been here. We have been screaming for you to hear us, and everyone around is saying that we are silent. We're not going anywhere. The world needs us, even if they don't want us. Our focus, our hearts, and even if it seems like so much of the world fully rejects that absolute truth, it's time to build a world that doesn't just accept neurodiversity, but embraces it and integrates it. A world where difference is not just tolerated, but celebrated.
nature likes diversity.
Yeah.
It's beneficial. And if you are a neurotypical person, support person in someone's life, I just ask that you let go of whatever expectation and let that person lead the way. That's it.
Yeah. Autism Acceptance Month. I don't want acceptance. Acceptable is, on a scale of 1 to 5, acceptable is a 3.
Yeah. Embrace.
I want autistic goodness. I want autistic greatness. I want 5 out of 5. I don't want acceptance. I want more than that.
We hope you do too.
Yeah.
We do appreciate you guys joining us for so long today.
I don't even know how long this was. Probably tremendous.
But it's, like I said, it's near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah.
And we feel very passionate about it.
Yeah. Sorry, I know I'm the dumb guy, not the professional lady.
You are not dumb by any means.
But
but we do appreciate the opportunity to have this platform too.
yes.
We recognize that that this is a privilege too. And we're choosing to use our privilege in this way.
Yep.
And like I said, this story is
applicable.
universal.
Yep.
So many marginalized communities have literally the same story. Different.
Yep.
Anyway.
It just makes me think about ICE detaining people that quote unquote illegal human beings.
Just because they're brown.
And now there's an autism registry and RFK saying we're a burden,
And that might scare many people
it should.
to conform. To conform. And I think this is our way of saying, no, take up space, right? Not in like the Katy Perry way, but in the take up space in your world, in this world.
Yeah.
Use your voice, look different, be different.
Yes. And don't let the most vulnerable of us fall through the cracks, because yes, I can stand here and speak on behalf of myself, but there are lots of people in the autistic community who do have a lot of co-occurring conditions and do need a lot of extra support. And they still are not part of this conversation because we don't have a way for them to be part of it. And that's a shortcoming on our part.
Alrighty. We love you guys.
Love you. Sorry it was so heavy.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Friends is an independent podcast produced by Vibe Therapy Services and is not a substitute for a session with a therapist. Our show art was created by Jocelyn Lang, and our theme music is Nature Nurture by The Implied Bear. Vibe Therapy is an Illinois-based private practice serving clients in person at our Wheaton office and virtually throughout the state of Illinois. We accept Blue Cross Blue Shield PPO, United Healthcare, Aetna, and Cigna Insurance. We also offer private pay rates, as well as 15-minute initial consultations. Therapy doesn't have to feel clinical. Visit vibetherapyservices.com today to see if we vibe.